The Galactic Survey ship Celestial Seeker drifted silently through the darkness at the edge of mapped space, its sensors probing the void for anything of interest. Captain Zixtel stood on the bridge, their iridescent scales reflecting the soft glow of holographic displays. After 3 months of routine exploration, the mission had yielded nothing but empty space and ordinary stellar phenomena. "Another waste of resources," muttered First Science Officer Renvax, their antenna twitching with frustration. "The Council insisted we survey this sector, but there's nothing here worth." The ship's proximity alerts suddenly blared to life. Zixtal's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as data streams poured across the main view screen. "Large structure detected," announced the sensor officer, "approximately 50 kilometers in length. Artificial construction confirmed." Zixtal leaned forward, their clawed hands gripping the command rail. "Show me." The view screen shifted, revealing a massive structure floating against the backdrop of stars. Its design was unlike anything in the Galactic Alliance database. Angular and utilitarian, with none of the flowing organic shapes preferred by modern civilizations. The station's dark hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Initial analysis suggests it's extremely old," Renvax reported, their fingers dancing across control surfaces. "Materials dating indicates at least 15,000 standard years." "Interesting." Zixtal's throat sacs pulsed with curiosity. "Any match in the historical archives?" "None, Captain. The design methodology doesn't align with any known spacefaring species from that era." "Most curious." Renvax paused, antennae rigid with surprise. "Captain, I'm detecting trace elements in the hull composition that match human manufacturing processes." A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Humans were among the newest additions to the Galactic Alliance, barely space-capable by modern standards. The idea that they could have built something like this was absurd. "Clearly a coincidence," Zixtal said. "Humans achieved spaceflight less than 500 years ago. Begin standard salvage procedures. This artifact might provide interesting insights into whoever actually built it." The Celestial Seeker moved closer, extending its boarding tubes toward the ancient station. Teams of salvage specialists prepared their equipment, ready to cut through the primitive hull and extract anything of value. "Sir," the engineering officer called out, "the cutting beams aren't penetrating the hull." Zixtal's scales shifted to a darker shade of confusion. "Increase power. Already at maximum. The material, it's not even warming up. This doesn't make sense. Our tools can cut through anything." "Launch analysis drones," ordered Renvax. Full spectrum scan. A swarm of sophisticated probe drones emerged from the ship's launch bays, surrounding the station like gleaming insects. Their sensors probed deep into the structure's composition, building a complete model of its internal systems. Or at least, they tried to. "This is impossible," Renvax muttered, their antennae writhing in agitation. "The scans, they're being reflected." "No, not reflected. They're being absorbed. Something in that hull is actively countering our attempts to analyze it." "Primitive construction, you said." Zixtal's voice carried a note of unease. The station's surface suddenly rippled, as if the solid metal had become liquid. Geometric patterns emerged, glowing with a soft blue light. The salvage team retreated in alarm as similar patterns appeared around every point where they'd attempted to breach the hull. "Energy spike," shouted the sensor officer. "Something's powering up inside." A beam of light shot from the station, sweeping across the Celestial Seeker. Every system it touched went dark for exactly 3 seconds before returning to normal. "What was that?" Zixtal demanded. "Some kind of scan," Renvax replied, studying the readings. "But the complexity. Captain, that single sweep contained more raw data processing than our entire ship's computer core. We're not dealing with primitive technology. This station is far beyond our current capabilities." "Sir," the communications officer's voice cracked with excitement, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in ancient human English." The bridge fell silent as text scrolled across their screens. Human GENETSC markieras DHTCTED in Siuriudubucium Paliment 0.01%. Partial Auhientation HCC IPTED INITIATING Limited HCCESS Piguaro Tosiolas We LCOME Descendants. Get me the council, Zixtal ordered quietly, and find me every human expert in the sector. I don't care what their credentials are. If they can help us understand what we found, I want them here. Captain, Renvac said softly, look at these energy readings. The station, it's not just active. It's calling something. Far above the celestial seeker's position, points of light began to emerge from seemingly empty space. More stations, identical to the first, shimmering into visibility as ancient cloaking systems deactivated. Dozens, then hundreds appeared, forming a vast network that had hidden in plain sight for millennia. How many? Zixtal whispered. Still counting, sir. Over 1,000 so far, and more appearing every minute. They form a perfect defensive grid across this entire sector of space. Renvax's antennae drooped in shock. Captain, they're all powered up, all functional, all waiting. For what? Based on their positioning and design, they're waiting for something to arrive. Something from outside the galaxy. Renvax's voice trembled. And judging by the scale of these defenses, whatever they were built to stop, our ancestors were terrified of it. Zixtal stared at the growing constellation of ancient human stations. Their people had dismissed humans as technological infants, barely worth notice in galactic affairs. Now, standing in the shadow of what their ancestors had built, that assumption seemed not just wrong, but dangerously arrogant. Send word to every council world, they ordered. Tell them we need to revise our understanding of human capabilities, and get me everything we have on human history from before their first ventures into space. I have a feeling we've been reading that story backwards. As the celestial seeker transmitted its findings, more stations continued to appear, their ancient systems awakening one by one. Humanity's forgotten guardians were stirring from their long slumber, preparing for the return of something their builders had sacrificed everything to stop. The galaxy was about to discover exactly why humans had seemed so confident despite their apparent technological inferiority. They hadn't been playing catch-up. They'd been remembering what they'd once been. And soon, everyone would remember with them. 3 days after the discovery, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, trying not to show her amusement at their barely concealed panic. The massive chamber held representatives from over 200 species, all focused intently on the lone human at the podium. You're saying you recognize these designs? Councillor Vexthra asked, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep skepticism. Not exactly, Sarah replied, gesturing to the holographic display of the stations, but the mathematical principles underlying their construction. Those are carved into human DNA. We've been using them without understanding their origin for centuries. It's why our primitive ships can operate in ways that confound your engineers. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Sarah had spent her career studying the peculiar quirks of human engineering, the way their spacecraft seemed to perform better than their apparent technology should allow, how their computers occasionally solved problems in mathematically impossible ways. Impossible, declared Hyde Administrator Ylvan, their tentacles writhing in agitation. Your species barely achieved spaceflight. These stations are at least 15,000 years old. Which means, Sarah said quietly, that someone went to extraordinary lengths to make us forget what we were. The question is, why? The council had little choice but to approve her expedition. Within hours, Sarah led a team of human specialists aboard the research vessel Ancestral Truth. The ship's alien crew watched with poorly concealed disdain as the humans installed their primitive equipment. Dr. James Rodriguez, quantum archaeologist, finished calibrating his instruments and grinned at Sarah. They still think we're savages playing with toys they don't understand. Let them think that, Sarah replied, checking her own devices. It's worked for us so far. The Ancestral Truth docked with the nearest station, its advanced systems barely able to maintain a stable connection. Sarah's team entered through an airlock that somehow had adapted perfectly to their ship's specifications. This architecture, whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, running her hands along walls that seemed to pulse with faint light at her touch. It's responding to us. The patterns, they're like fractals of human thought. Sarah nodded, her own instruments recording everything. The station's interior defied conventional physics, spaces folding into themselves in ways that should have been impossible. Yet to human eyes, it all made perfect sense. Look at this, James called out, standing before what appeared to be a control interface. Symbols flickered across its surface. Not text, but pure mathematical concepts that registered directly in their minds. Sarah placed her hand on the interface. Information flooded her consciousness, but not in the overwhelming torrent the alien scientists had reported. For her, it was like remembering something long forgotten. They're not stations, she breathed. They're seeds. The chamber around them began to transform. Walls shifted, revealing layers of technology that had remained hidden for millennia. The alien crew members stumbled back in shock, but the humans stood their ground, somehow knowing they were in no danger. Genetic authentication confirmed, announced a voice that wasn't quite sound. Initiating restoration protocols. Dr. Chen, the ship's captain, called over the comm, panic evident in their voice. The station is growing. Through the viewports, they watched as the station's exterior flowered open like a mechanical lotus. Layers of ancient nanotechnology awakened, reconstructing systems that redefined what they thought possible. Captain, Sarah replied calmly, I suggest you move your ship back. Things are about to get interesting. The station's transformation continued, revealing weapon systems that could reshape space-time itself. But more importantly, it unveiled libraries of data, the true history of humanity. We weren't primitive, James said, reading through files that downloaded directly into their minds. We were running. Sarah nodded, pieces falling into place. Not just running, hiding. Setting up defenses while we regressed. Waited. But why make ourselves forget? Because they were hunting us, Yuki answered, her eyes wide as she accessed more data. Something from outside the galaxy. Something that could track advanced civilizations by their technological signatures. So we hid ourselves in plain sight. And left ourselves these. Sarah gestured at the transformed station. Seeds of our old knowledge, waiting until they were needed again. The alien crew watched in stunned silence as more stations activated, each responding to the presence of human DNA. A network of impossible technology, built by a civilization that had chosen to forget its own power rather than risk detection. Dr. Chen, the captain said quietly, the council is demanding answers. What do I tell them? Sarah looked at her team, saw the same understanding in their eyes. Their primitive technology, their inefficient methods, all of it had been carefully designed to mask their true capabilities. Tell them, she said, that humanity didn't just discover spaceflight 5 centuries ago. We rediscovered it. And now, she watched as another station loomed open like a flower of light and metal. Now we're remembering everything else. In the depths of the station, ancient systems continued their awakening sequence. Data streamed through human minds that had been prepared for this moment through countless generations of careful genetic engineering. The truth of their legacy unfolded before them, beautiful and terrible. There's more, James said suddenly, his voice tight with urgency. These stations, they're not just defensive positions. They're an early warning system, and they're activating now because a signal pulsed through the network, carrying a message that humanity had hidden from itself for 15,000 years. The thing they had run from, the enemy that had driven them to bury their own civilization, was returning. And this time, Humanity would not run. The Galactic Council's emergency session dissolved into chaos as holographic displays showed more stations activating across the galaxy. Dr. Chen's report had triggered a fundamental reassessment of human history, but no one was prepared for what happened next. Beneath the surfaces of seemingly primitive human colony worlds, ancient machinery stirred to life. Cities transformed, revealing technological marvels that had masqueraded as simple structures for centuries. The galaxy watched in awe as humanity's carefully constructed mask of mediocrity fell away. "It's happening everywhere," Sarah breathed, watching the data streams aboard the transformed station. Every human settlement, every primitive outpost, they were all camouflaged installations. The station's central chamber had become a vast command center, its systems interfacing directly with human neural patterns. James and Yuki worked at controls that responded to thought alone, accessing libraries of forgotten knowledge. "These aren't just defensive positions," Yuki announced, her hands dancing through holographic displays. "They're part of something bigger, something called the Sentinel Network." The alien captain, who had refused to abandon their post despite the station's transformation, watched in stunned silence as new star charts materialized around them. The galaxy map was overlaid with patterns that had been invisible to modern sensors, a vast web of hidden infrastructure. "Our ancestors didn't just build isolated stations," James said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They reconstructed the entire galaxy, every unusual stellar phenomenon, every natural space-time anomaly. They're all part of an integrated defense system." Sarah moved to a central platform where streams of data converge. The station recognized her authority, downloading centuries of compressed information directly into her mind. The truth was both beautiful and terrifying. "We didn't forget," she whispered. "We chose to sleep, to become something so technologically unremarkable that we'd be invisible to what was hunting us. And we seeded the galaxy with everything we'd need when it was time to wake up." Suddenly, alarms echoed through the station. New data poured in from the outer reaches of the network. Something had triggered the perimeter sensors. "Multiple contacts," Yuki reported, her voice tense. "Coming from intergalactic space. The pattern matches historical records of them. The enemy humanity had hidden from for 15 millennia had returned. But this time, the trap was ready." Throughout human space, more transformations accelerated. Orbital platforms that had been dismissed as outdated revealed themselves as nodes in a vast quantum network. The seemingly primitive human defense fleet began to change, ships morphing into forms that defied conventional physics. "Message from Earth," James called out. "The Sol system defenses are online. They're asking for authentication to activate the final protocols." Sarah stood in the center of the command hub, feeling the weight of 15,000 years of preparation. Her DNA carried the command codes passed down through countless generations for this moment. "Show me," she ordered. The station's displays shifted, revealing the true nature of Earth's moon. What everyone had assumed was a natural satellite was actually an artificial construction of staggering complexity. The master control unit for humanity's hidden defense network. "Authorization confirmed," an ancient voice announced throughout the station. "Initiating phase Omega. All units prepare for hostile contact." The alien captain watched in amazement as the humans worked with technology that shouldn't exist, coordinating a defense network that spanned the galaxy. "Why?" they finally asked. "Why maintain this deception for so long?" Sarah turned to them, her eyes reflecting the light of awakening systems. "Because they hunt by tracking technological advancement. They destroy civilizations that reach a certain level of development. We faced them before, nearly lost everything. So we made a choice, to hide, to wait, to prepare. We became the galaxy's gardeners, subtly guiding other species away from technologies that would draw attention." "The Council," the captain whispered. "All our carefully managed technological progress was us protecting you." James finished. "Humanity didn't join the Galactic Alliance because we were primitive. We joined to ensure no one developed in ways that would attract them. More stations continued to transform, each one revealing new aspects of humanity's true capabilities. The hidden network that had slumbered for millennia was awakening, preparing for a confrontation that had been 15,000 years in the making. "They're accelerating," Yuki reported, multiple contact groups approaching from different vectors. "They'll reach the outer defense perimeter in less than 48 hours. Sarah nodded, accessing command protocols that had waited generations for this moment. Throughout human space, buried technologies continued to emerge. Ships that had seemed obsolete revealed their true forms. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids powered up. "Send word to all human worlds," she ordered. "Execute Emergency Protocol Omega. It's time to remember who we are." Across the galaxy, humanity's calculated regression began to reverse. The species that had played at being technological infants stood ready to defend not just themselves, but all the civilizations they had secretly guided and protected for millennia. The hunters were returning to a galaxy they thought held only prey. Instead, they would find the trap that humanity had spent 15,000 years preparing. The awakening was complete, and the war that humanity had carefully prepared for was about to begin. The hunters arrived exactly as humanity's ancient records predicted, massive vessels that seemed to consume light itself, moving through space in ways that violated known physics. The Galactic Council's most powerful warships looked like toys beside them. But humanity was ready. Multiple hostile contacts breaching the outer marker, Yuki announced from her station. "Configuration matches historical records. They're using the same tactics as before." Sarah stood at the command hub, watching as the enemy fleet approached. The transformed station hummed with power that had waited millennia to be unleashed. Across human space, identical scenes played out as the carefully orchestrated defense plan activated. "They still think they're hunting primitives," James said, monitoring the enemy's approach pattern. "They haven't even raised their shields." The hunters' ships moved with absolute confidence, their sensors scanning for signs of advanced civilization. But humanity's greatest achievement had been learning to hide in plain sight. Every scanning beam passed through carefully crafted layers of deception. "All human vessels, execute Protocol Sunburst," Sarah commanded. Across the battlefield, ships that had appeared obsolete shed their false skins. Hulls that seemed to be simple metal revealed themselves as layered quantum matrices. Engines that had been dismissed as primitive nuclear drives transformed into something that made even the hunters' technology seem crude. The enemy fleet faltered, their confidence shaken by the sudden revelation. "They're attempting to coordinate," Yuki reported. "Their command signals match the patterns we recorded 15,000 years ago. No adaptation, no evolution. They never needed to improve because nothing survived their attacks. Until now," Sarah said quietly. "James, activate the gravity lance." The station shuddered as ancient weapon systems powered up. Space itself seemed to twist as energies that had been carefully hidden for millennia surged through reborn circuits. The hunters' ships began to respond, but they were too late. "Target locked," James announced. Firing. A beam of distorted spacetime lanced out from the station, striking the nearest hunter vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to fold around the target. The massive ship compressed into a point of light and vanished. The remaining hunter vessels reacted instantly, their weapons powering up. But they were firing at defenses designed specifically to counter them, built by a civilization that had spent 15,000 years preparing for this exact moment. Multiple hunter groups attempting to breach the inner defense line, Yuki called out. "They're adapting their approach vectors." Sarah nodded, watching as the battle unfolded exactly as their ancestors had planned. "Signal the Lunar Command Center. Execute Protocol Starbreak." Earth's moon, humanity's greatest deception, began to move. Its surface cracked open like an eggshell, revealing layers of technology that redefined what was possible. Energy cascaded between the fragments as the structure reconfigured itself into its true form. A battle station larger than most planets. The hunters' fleet visibly recoiled. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they faced not prey but a predator that had anticipated their every move. "They're attempting to retreat," James reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. "Trying to fall back to regroup." "Not this time," Sarah said. "Activate the null field." Throughout human space, hidden generators that had masqueraded as natural phenomena powered up. Space itself seemed to thicken around the hunter fleet, trapping them in a web of altered physics that humanity had spent millennia weaving. "Signal from Earth Command," Yuki announced. "All human settlements report full military awakening. The entire defense network is online." The hunters found themselves caught in humanity's trap, facing weapons designed explicitly to counter their technology. Ships that had terrorized countless civilizations now found themselves unable to penetrate defenses built by their most elusive prey. "They're trying to communicate," James said suddenly. "First time in recorded history they've attempted contact with a target species." Sarah's lips curved in a grim smile. "Put them through." The message that came through was not in any known language, but in pure concepts of dominance and demand. The hunters had never needed to negotiate before. They expected surrender, compliance, death. Instead, humanity responded with 15,000 years of carefully contained rage. "All stations, execute final containment protocol," Sarah ordered. "Show them what they've actually been hunting." The transformed stations, the reborn ships, the awakened defenses, all of them had been powerful, but they weren't humanity's true weapon. As the final protocol activated, the hunters learned what humanity had really been building during their long hibernation. Space itself began to change as hidden mechanisms older than most civilizations rewrote the laws of physics around the trapped fleet. The hunters had thought themselves masters of space and time, but humanity had spent millennia learning to alter reality itself. "Containment field stable," Yuki reported. "We have them." The galaxy watched as humanity revealed the full extent of their preparations. The seemingly primitive species that had hidden among them stood revealed as the architects of a trap 15,000 years in the making. And the hunt was about to change directions. The containment field shimmered like a soap bubble stretched across the stars, holding the hunter's fleet in its grasp. Within the transformed command station, Sarah Chen watched as 15,000 years of preparation reached its culmination. "Analysis of their ship designs complete," James reported, his hands dancing through holographic displays. "They haven't changed a thing since our last encounter. Perfect preservation of their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. The hunters had never needed to evolve. Until now, nothing had survived their attacks long enough to force adaptation. Their very stagnation had become the weapon humanity would use against them." "Signal from Earth Command," Yuki announced. "The lunar platform has achieved full combat configuration. All systems are synchronized with the defense network." Through the station's enhanced sensors, Sarah watched Earth's moon complete its transformation. The artificial construct that had hidden for millennia now stood revealed as the master control unit of humanity's grand design. Its surface was alive with energy patterns that defied conventional physics. "They're trying to communicate again," James said. "Different frequency this time. They're offering terms." Sarah's laugh held no humor. 15,000 years too late for that. "Execute final protocol." Throughout human space, hidden machinery that had slumbered since humanity's apparent regression hummed to life. The galaxy itself seemed to shiver as ancient systems awakened. What appeared to be natural phenomena, nebulae, asteroid fields, even some small stars, revealed themselves as components of a vast machine that encompassed entire sectors. The hunters' fleet tried to break free, their weapons useless against defenses designed specifically to counter them. Their notorious planet-killing beams dispersed harmlessly against shields built by a civilization that had spent millennia preparing for this exact moment. "All systems aligned," Yuki reported. "The network is ready." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of countless generations who had maintained this deception, who had lived and died, knowing they were part of a plan larger than themselves. Begin the sequence. Space itself began to fold around the trapped hunter fleet. The containment field that held them wasn't just a prison. It was a lens, focusing the power of humanity's hidden infrastructure. Reality twisted as forces that had been carefully gathered for 15,000 years were finally unleashed. "They're trying to self-destruct," James called out, "attempting to deny us access to their technology." "Let them try," Sarah replied calmly. "We've had 15 millennia to study their demolition protocols." The hunters' desperate attempt at denial failed as humanity's systems countered their every move. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they faced not just defeat, but complete comprehension. Throughout the galaxy, representatives of various species watched in awe as humanity's true nature was revealed. The primitive newcomers who had seemed so unremarkable stood exposed as the architects of the most elaborate trap in galactic history. "Message from the Galactic Council," Yuki announced. "They're requesting an explanation." Sarah smiled. "Show them." The station's displays activated, projecting humanity's true history for all to see. The ancient conflict that had forced them to hide, the careful planning that had gone into their apparent regression, the subtle ways they had guided galactic civilization away from technologies that would attract the hunters' attention. "We weren't just hiding," she explained to the watching galaxy. "We were protecting everyone, leading potential targets away from detection, while we prepared the ultimate defense." The containment field pulsed with energy as the final phase began. The hunters' fleet, trapped within the lens of altered spacetime, began to change. Their ships, their weapons, their very existence was being rewritten by forces they had never imagined possible. "Transformation reaching critical threshold," James reported. "Field stability at maximum." Sarah watched as humanity's greatest achievement unfolded. The hunters weren't being destroyed. They were being changed. 15,000 years of research had taught humanity how to do more than just fight their ancient enemy. They had learned how to save them. The hunter fleet emerged from the transformation field fundamentally altered. The drive that had sent them ravaging across space, destroying advanced civilizations, had been rewritten at a quantum level. The predators had been transformed into guardians. "Signal from Earth Command," Yuki announced, her voice filled with wonder. "All monitoring stations report successful conversion. The hunters, they're standing down." Throughout human space, the hidden defenses began to power down. Stations that had revealed their true nature slowly reconfigured themselves, maintaining readiness while returning to their camouflaged state. The galaxy would remember this demonstration of power, but humanity had learned long ago the value of appearing harmless. "Send word to all human worlds," Sarah ordered. "Operation Starkeeper is complete. Begin gradual power-down sequence. Let's give the galaxy time to adjust before we hide everything away again." The transformed hunters, their consciousness expanded beyond their former driving hunger, began to integrate with the defense network they had sought to destroy. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't in defeating their ancient enemy, but in finding a way to make them part of the solution. As the galactic community struggled to comprehend the full scope of what they had witnessed, Sarah stood at the command hub, watching the stars. Humanity had kept its secret for 15,000 years, protecting countless species while preparing for this moment. Now they had new secrets to keep, new deceptions to maintain. The galaxy would never see them quite the same way again, but that was acceptable. They had learned long ago that true power lay not in displaying strength, but in knowing when to hide it. The hunt was over, and humanity's real work, shepherding the galaxy's civilizations toward a future they had glimpsed 15,000 years ago, could finally begin. In the depths of space, the transformed stations continued their eternal watch, ready to awaken again if needed. Humanity had proven itself not just a match for the hunters, but something far more important, worthy guardians of all galactic life. The age of hiding was over. The age of guidance had begun.